I stood at the service entrance of the estate I grew up in, my arms burning under the weight of a crate filled with rare orchids. My mother, Cynthia, cracked the door just wide enough to slide a plastic badge through the gap. It didn't say my name. It just said staff. She told me to use the back stairs so I wouldn't confuse the VIP guests. I am an award-winning landscape architect. I designed every inch of the garden they were celebrating in. But to my family, I was just the help with a pulse. Before I tell you what I found in the library that made me buy the whole property, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I walked through the kitchen, navigating a war zone of steam, shouting caterers, and trays of canapés. The executive chef, a man I'd sourced organic rosemary for since I was 22, gave me a curt nod. He respected me. He knew that the herb garden outside didn't just grow itself, it was engineered. But to the people whose last name I shared, I was just a pair of hands that came cheap. June. Darling. My mother's voice floated down the service corridor, not even bothering to locate me visually. Don't forget the hydrangeas in the ballroom foyer. And try to stay out of the main sightlines. We want a clean aesthetic for the videographer. I moved through the back hallways, the staff lanyard swinging like a pendulum against my chest. It was almost laughable. In the real world, I ran a landscape architecture firm with clients in Dubai and Silicon Valley. My net profit last year was $320,000. I had been featured in Architectural Digest 3 times. But in this house, my portfolio didn't exist. Here, I was just the girl who played in the dirt. I set the crate down in the ballroom foyer and started arranging. My hands moved on autopilot, stripped the leaves, cut the stems at 45 degrees, balanced the negative space. It was muscle memory. Just like the muscle memory of making myself small so my brother could feel big. I looked up and saw him across the room. Tyler, 32 years old, wearing a bespoke navy suit that cost more than my first car, holding a crystal tumbler of scotch at 11 in the morning. He was holding court with a group of early investors, laughing too loudly, gesturing too broadly. He looked the part of the heir perfectly. The prince of the empire. You'd never know, looking at him, that he was rotting from the inside out. I remembered the whispers I'd heard at the country club just last month. I was installing a vertical garden in the lobby, hidden behind a fern, when 2 of my father's golf buddies walked by. Richard's girl, the one with the plants. Shame. I heard she's and fragile. Richard says the gardening is just therapy. Keeps her stable. Fragile. That was the word my parents used. It was their favorite shield. If I was successful, it was a manic episode. If I was quiet, I was depressed. If I was angry, I was unstable. It was a brilliant strategy. Really, if you paint someone as broken, nobody questions it when you try to take away their keys. I jammed a stem of white phalaenopsis into the floral foam. Snap. I wasn't fragile. I was durable. That was the trap of normalized cruelty I'd been living in for 29 years. You grow up thinking that service is the rent you pay for existence. You think if you just work harder, if you just arrange the flowers perfectly enough, if you just stay out of the photos like they asked, eventually, they'll see you. Eventually, they'll say thank you. But they don't. They just ask for more flowers. Hey, gardener. Tyler shouted across the quiet room. He didn't use my name. He waved his glass at me. Ice clinking. Make sure the podium is clear. I need space to work the room tonight. Big announcements coming. He winked. A slick, greasy wink that made my skin crawl. Big announcements. I repeated to myself, cutting a stem so hard the shears clicked. I finished the arrangement and picked up my empty crate. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I needed a vase for the overflow stems. and I knew there was a Ming vase in the library they never used. I slipped into the hallway. The heavy oak door slightly ajar. I could hear voices. My father's baritone. My mother's anxious flutter. And Tyler's arrogant drawl. I stopped. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was auditing. I pressed my back against the damask wallpaper, holding my breath. The scent of old leather and expensive cigar smoke drifted out from the library. It was the smell of my childhood. The smell of exclusion. The smell of decisions being made about my life without my consent. She's not going to sign it voluntarily. Richard. My mother was saying. Her voice was high, tight, vibrating with the specific anxiety of a woman watching her social standing evaporate. She's stubborn. You know how she gets with her little projects. She won't have a choice. My father replied. I could hear the ice clinking in his glass. A sound as casual as the violence in his words. We frame it as a protective conservatorship. For her own good. We tell the board she's having another episode. The stress of running a business is too much for her. We're just stepping in to help. Help. Tyler scoffed. We're stepping in to liquidate. Her business accounts are sitting on fat cash reserves. I checked. She's got the liquidity we need to cover the quiddity gap. The gap you created? My father snapped. But there was no heat in it. Just resignation. 8.5 million. Tyler. How do you even lose that much on crypto in 6 months? It's not lost. It's just temporarily illiquid. Tyler said. His voice smooth. Unbothered. Look. Once we absorb June's assets, we plug the hole. The auditors won't look twice. We announce the merger tonight. Family unity strategy. The investors will eat it up. They love a rehabilitation story. Troubled sister saved by loving brother. It writes itself. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me cold and lightheaded. They weren't just using me. They were cannibalizing me. But what if she fights it? My mother asked. What if she gets a lawyer? With what money? Tyler laughed. Once we freeze her accounts, she can't hire a parking attendant, let alone a lawyer. Besides, who are they going to believe? The successful hotel magnates? Or the girl who talks to plants? My father sighed. The sound of a man convincing himself he was a hero. It's for the best. Really. She's never been cut out for the real world. We're doing her a favor. Taking the burden off her shoulders. A favor. I whispered to the empty hall. Suddenly, the physics of their cruelty made perfect sense. It wasn't just greed, it was the illusion of power in an empty wallet. They were broke. They were failures. But their egos were too bloated to fit inside that reality. To survive the cognitive dissonance, they had to rewrite the script. They couldn't be thieves stealing from a successful daughter. That would make them pathetic. So, they had to be benevolent guardians, saving a fragile girl. They needed me to be small so they could feel big. Their arrogance wasn't strength. It was the only currency they had left. Tyler laughed again. Imagine her face when I bring her up on stage. Come here. Junie. Big Brother's got you. She'll probably cry. It'll be great for the cameras. I stepped back from the door. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. Screaming is what a fragile person would do. Screaming is what a victim would do. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a liability they hadn't accounted for. I turned around and walked silently down the hall. Past the portraits of ancestors who would have been ashamed of them. Past the ballroom, where the flowers I arranged stood perfect and silent. I walked out the front door. Right past the valet, who looked confused to see the staff leaving through the main entrance. I got into my truck, sat in the driver's seat, and took a deep breath. The air conditioning blasted against my face, drying the sweat I didn't know was there. They wanted to announce a restructuring? Fine. Let's restructure. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jordan. He picked up on the second ring. Hey. June. What's up? I need you to clear your schedule tonight. I said. My voice was steady. Cold. I need a full forensic audit of the Callahan Hotel Group. And Jordan, bring your laptop. We're going to war. I drove straight to the diner on Abercorn Street. The one with the neon sign that buzzed like an angry hornet. Jordan was already there in a back booth. A stack of pancakes untouched in front of him. His laptop glowing against his face. Jordan wasn't just a friend I'd met in undergrad, he was a forensic accountant who audited cartels for fun. He looked at my face, saw the lack of tears, and didn't ask if I was okay. He just turned the screen toward me. I'm in, he said, tapping a key. Their cybersecurity is a joke. The password was Legacy 40 with a capital L. Show me, I said. We spent the next hour dissecting the corpse of my family's legacy. It wasn't surgery, it was an autopsy. Here is your fragile little gardening business, Jordan said, pulling up my tax returns I'd sent him. Net profit last year, $320,000. Zero debt. Cash, reserves healthy. He swiped to the next window. And here is the Callahan Hotel Group. Red. Everything was red. They aren't just bleeding. June. They're hemorrhaging, Jordan said, pointing to the lines. Operational losses for 5 consecutive quarters. And this? He highlighted a column labeled Consulting Fees. This is Tyler. I looked at the numbers. $8.5 million transferred to offshore accounts over 18 months, crypto exchanges and online casinos. Jordan translated. Your brother didn't just have bad luck. He embezzled the company into the ground. And your parents signed off on the quarterly reports. They knew. They've been covering for him by leveraging the estate. They're broke. I realized that's why they need my accounts. They need a solvency injection to stop the bank from seizing the house. Correct. You aren't the black sheep. June. You're the piggy bank. I closed the laptop. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt surgical. I had the diagnosis. Now I needed the scalpel. Print it, I said. All of it. I left Jordan with the printer humming and drove to the assisted living facility in the historic district. Grandma Eleanor was sitting on her balcony, staring at the river. She was 90, sharp as a tack, and the only person in the family who had ever told me I was smart before telling me I was pretty. You look like you're going to a funeral, dear, she said, without turning around. Not a funeral, Grandma. An eviction. I sat down and told her everything. The conversation in the library. The plan to declare me incompetent. The embezzlement. I showed her the spreadsheets Jordan had printed. Eleanor put on her glasses. She read every line. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just tightened her grip on her cane until her knuckles turned white. I built that company with one hotel and a lot of grit, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Richard and Cynthia were supposed to be caretakers. Instead, they raised a thief and decided to feed him my granddaughter. She reached into her walker bag and pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder. I was saving this for after I died, she said, handing it to me. But I think you need it tonight. I opened it. It was a deed. The deed to the Savannah estate. I never transferred the property to your parents, Eleanor said. I put it in a trust. Richard has lifetime usage rights, contingent on moral and financial good standing. Embezzlement and fraud? Those violate the clause. She pulled a pen from her pocket and signed the bottom line of a transfer document. I'm resigning as trustee. Effective immediately, she said, looking me in the eye. I'm appointing you. It's your house. June, go take out the trash. I didn't go back to the service entrance. I didn't park my truck around back. I took a black car to the front gate. Just like the investors. The politicians. and the people my parents were trying so desperately to impress. I had traded the cotton staff polo for silk. Emerald green. Floor length. Structured enough to hide the tremors in my hands. Sharp enough to cut. I walked up the limestone steps. The sound of my heels clicking a rhythm against the stone. Click, click, click. It sounded like a countdown. The ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and forced laughter. The air smelled of expensive perfume and desperation. I spotted my mother near the ice sculpture. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes scanned my dress, my hair, my face. She didn't see a daughter. She saw a variable she thought she had solved. She rushed over, her smile tight, her eyes hard. "June," she hissed, gripping my forearm with fingers like talons. "I thought you left. You look appropriate. Thank God. Did you come to your senses?" "I came to support the family," I said. My voice was level, flat. Relief washed over her face. Disgusting and absolute. She interpreted my calmness as surrender. To her, there were only two options: fight or submit. Since I wasn't fighting, I must have broken. "Good girl," she whispered. "Tyler is about to start the speeches. Just follow his lead. Nod. Smile. And look grateful. We're doing this for you. Remember?" "I remember everything," I said. She patted my cheek, a gesture that felt less like affection and more like ownership, and steered me toward the front of the room. Tyler was already on stage, tapping the microphone. He looked commanding, charismatic, the perfect picture of modern success. The room quieted. "Welcome, everyone," Tyler boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Tonight isn't just about 40 years of history. It's about the future. It's about legacy." He paused for effect, scanning the crowd until his eyes locked on me. He smiled. It was the smile of a wolf looking at a lamb that had wandered into the den. "As many of you know, our family believes in taking care of our own," Tyler continued, his voice dropping to a somber, performative register. "My sister, June, has been struggling with her health recently. The pressure of her small business. It's been a heavy burden." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. I saw heads turn, pitying glances, whispers. "Fragile. Poor thing. But the Callahan Group doesn't leave anyone behind," Tyler announced, opening his arms wide. "Tonight, I am proud to announce that we are officially bringing June and her assets under the family umbrella. We are merging her talents with our resources to ensure she is protected, supported, and safe." The applause was polite, confused, but supportive. They bought it. They bought the lie because it was wrapped in a tuxedo. Tyler beckoned me to the stage. "Come up here. June, welcome home." This was the trap. The public acceptance. If I walked up there and smiled, I was validating his narrative. I was signing my own warrant. I walked to the stairs. I ascended the platform. The spotlight hit me, blinding and hot. Tyler handed me the microphone, his hand damp with sweat, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Just say thank you," he whispered in my ear. "Off mic. Don't embarrass us." I took the microphone. I looked at the crowd. I looked at my parents in the front row, beaming with the pride of predators who had just secured their meal. They thought I was there to capitulate. They thought I was handing over the keys to my life. I smiled. "Thank you, Tyler," I said into the mic. "You're right about one thing. It is time for a restructuring." I reached into my clutch, pulled out my phone, and plugged it into the HDMI cable resting on the podium. The logo of the Callahan Hotel Group on the giant projection screen flickered and vanished. It was replaced by a spreadsheet. The screen behind me didn't display a touching photo montage of family memories. It didn't show a timeline of the Callahan legacy. It showed a split-screen spreadsheet, projected in high definition. 10 feet tall, the room went dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the ice melting in the glasses. I know the text is a little small, I said, my voice conversational, calm, echoing slightly through the speakers. Let me walk you through the data. I tapped my phone screen. The left side of the projection zoomed in. Column A, I said, pointing to the green figures. This is the audited financial statement of my landscape architecture firm for the last fiscal year. Net profit, $320,000. Debt, 0. Cash on hand, liquid and solvent. I paused. I looked at the investors in the front row. I saw the confusion on their faces turn into calculation. And column B. I continued. Swiping left. The screen shifted to a wall of red ink. This is the Callahan Hotel Group. A collective gasp rippled through the room. It wasn't polite anymore. It was the sound of 100 wallets snapping shut. Operational losses for 5 consecutive quarters. I read from the screen, dissecting their failure like I was explaining a root rot infestation. Liabilities exceeding assets by $4 million. The company you are celebrating tonight is technically insolvent. Tyler stepped toward me, his face a mask of panic. Cut the feed. He hissed at the AV technician in the wings. Cut it now, but the technician didn't move. I'd paid him $500 cash 10 minutes ago to make sure the HDMI cable stayed exactly where it was. We're having some technical difficulties. Tyler shouted to the crowd, forcing a laugh that sounded like a bark. My sister. She's having an episode. This is part of the illness I mentioned. I don't think so. Tyler, I said into the mic. Because numbers don't have mental breakdowns. I swiped again. The screen changed. This time, it wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a transaction log. Pages and pages of transfers. This is where the money went. I said. The room watched, mesmerized. As the names scrolled by, Crypto Exchange, Cayman, Lucky Star, Betting, High Roller Holdings, $8.5 million. I said, enunciating every syllable. Embezzled from the company operating accounts over 18 months. Transferred directly to personal accounts controlled by the CFO. By my brother. Tyler stopped moving. He looked at the screen. Then, at the crowd. He looked stripped. The arrogance. The swagger. The Prince of the Empire persona, it all evaporated. Leaving behind a terrified boy in an expensive suit. That's authorized consulting. He stammered. But his voice cracked. It's fraud. I corrected. And it's a felony. I looked down at my parents. My mother was gripping the table so hard her knuckles were white. My father was staring at me with a hatred so pure, it almost had a physical weight. And here is the worst part. I said, swiping to the final slide. It was an email chain. An email from the external auditors to my father. Dated 6 months ago. Flagging the irregularities. And my father's reply, bury it. We'll cover it with the estate equity. Have creations? And never cuted. They knew. I told the room. They knew he was stealing from you. They knew the ship was sinking. And their plan to save it was to seize my business. Claim I was incompetent. And use my money to plug the hole. I looked at the crowd. That is the family unity strategy they wanted you to invest in tonight. The silence in the room broke. It shattered. Voices rose in a wave of angry murmurs. I saw the senator whisper something to his aide and walk briskly toward the exit. I saw investors pulling out their phones. The illusion was dead. My father stood up. He didn't look like a tycoon anymore. He looked like a cornered animal. He surged toward the stage, his face purple with rage. That's enough, he roared. He scrambled up the stairs, reaching for me. You ungrateful little liar, get off my stage, get out of my house. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. I will have you committed. He spat, spittle flying. I will ruin you. Let go of her. Richard. The voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chaos like a whip. My father froze. He looked down into the crowd. The sea of tuxedos parted. Grandma Eleanor stood there. She was leaning heavily on her cane, but her spine was steel. She wasn't supposed to be here. They had left her at the assisted living facility, telling her the gala was too much excitement. But I had sent a car for her, Mother. Richard stammered, releasing my arm. You shouldn't be here. June is telling the truth. Eleanor said. She didn't use a microphone. She didn't need one. And you are trespassing. Richard blinked. Trespassing? This is my house. It hasn't been your house since 1985. Eleanor said, walking slowly toward the stage. The room fell silent again. Watching the matriarch. I placed this estate in a trust. You were granted lifetime usage rights, contingent on the moral and financial stewardship of the family name. She reached the bottom of the stairs. She looked up at her son with a disappointment so profound it felt like a judgment from God. Embezzlement, she said. Fraud. Conspiracy to defraud a family member. You have violated every clause of the agreement. She reached into her purse and pulled out the document I had watched her sign hours ago. She held it up, as of this morning. I have resigned as trustee, she announced. I have appointed a new administrator. Someone who actually knows how to build something. Someone who knows the value of work. She pointed her cane at me. This is June's house. Eleanor said, and she is evicting you. My father looked at me. He looked at the deed in Eleanor's hand. He looked at the screen behind me, still glowing with the evidence of his failure. You can't do this, he whispered. We're family. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called me fragile. The man who had tried to steal my life because he was too proud to fix his own. I'm not doing this to family, I said. I'm doing this to a liability. I turned to the security team. I had hired actual professionals, standing quietly in the wings. Please escort these guests off the property, I said. They're disrupting the event. The police lights were the only tacky decoration I allowed that night. They flashed against the portico, painting the white columns in strobes of red and blue. Tyler was led out in handcuffs, flanked by federal agents who had been contacted by the investors before the canapes were even cleared. He didn't look at me. He was too busy weeping, begging the senator to make a phone call. The senator had already left. My parents were escorted off the premises by the security team. They didn't go quietly. My mother screamed that I was ungrateful, that I was destroying the family. My father just stared at the ground, a king without a kingdom. Realizing his reign had ended the moment he underestimated the gardener, I stood on the balcony with Grandma Eleanor, watching the tail lights fade into the night. It's quiet, Eleanor said, leaning on the railing. It's empty. I replied, no. Darling, she corrected, tapping my hand. It's cleared. Now, you can plant. 6 months later, the estate didn't look like a fortress anymore. The gates were open. I had converted the main grounds into a community botanical garden and research center. The library where they plotted my demise was now my office. The air smelling of fresh soil and coffee instead of cigar smoke and deception. I was sitting by the new fire pit when the mail arrived. A single envelope. Heavy cream stationery. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. I opened it. June. It read, your father is not doing well. The condo is so small. We forgive you for what you did. But please, we need. I didn't finish reading it. I didn't need to. It was the same song, just a different key. They didn't want a daughter, they wanted a lifeline. They wanted the resource back. I tossed the letter into the fire. I watched the paper curl, the ink blackening. The words "we forgive you" dissolving into ash. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt light. There is a lie that society tells you, especially if you are the one who keeps things running. They tell you that walking away is an act of violence. They tell you that cutting off family is a failure of love. But that's not true. If you are standing on the edge right now, wondering if you're allowed to leave, listen to me. You are not a branch that needs to be pruned to save the tree. You are the tree. And sometimes, to survive, you have to sever the rot at the root. It isn't cruelty. It's photosynthesis. You are clearing the canopy so you can finally feel the sun. I watched the last of the embers float up into the savanna sky. I brushed the ash from my hands. Then I stood up, walked back into my house, and got to work. If you've ever had to prune a toxic branch to save the tree, share this story. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales of justice served cold.